Text Talks Mini Lecture.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Brian Black, and Katie and Alex have asked me to talk about Stridharma and the Pativrata today. So, very quickly, Stridharma basically means the Dharma of women, and the Pativrata means the perfect wife. Stridharma, in the word Stridharma, Stri means woman and Dharma means Dharma. And I'm sure you've come across the word Dharma before. In the word Pativrata, the Pati basically means husband and Vrata means a vow. So a Pativrata, or a devoted wife, or sometimes translated as a perfect wife, is a woman who's devoted to her husband. Now, both Stridharma and the Pativrata are often seen as very restrictive and submissive roles for women. So, for example, according to R.T. Dund, who's a scholar of women in Hinduism, the Pativrata, for her, she says, the central tenet of the Pativrata Dharma is that a woman should hold her husband to be no less than a god. So we can see how restrictive that sounds. Also, there's a famous quotation from the Laws of Manu, which is a Sanskrit text, which is part of Hinduism that some of you might have heard about before. In the Laws of Manu, it says, for a woman, her father guards her in girlhood, her husband guards her in youth, her son guards her in old age. A woman does not deserve independence. So again, we see how restrictive the roles of Stridharma and the Pativrata can be. Now, two of the most famous examples of women who abide by Stridharma and who live up to the role of the Pativrata can be found in the Hindu epic, the Mahabharata. One of the things that I think you'll realize the more you learn about Hinduism is how much stories demonstrate and illustrate the main concepts and ideas. So, within the Mahabharata, there are two characters in particular that live up to these ideals. One is Gandhari. Gandhari's a queen, and Gandhari marries a king who is blind. Gandhari was so devoted to her husband that she blindfolded herself on her wedding day and lived the remainder of her life with a blindfold on, just so that she could completely share the experience of blindness with her husband. So this sort of extreme loyalty that a wife can show to her husband is an example of Pativrata. Another example of a Pativrata is Draupadi. Draupadi is the main female character in the Mahabharata. And there's this one scene in particular where she has a dialogue, a conversation with another woman. This is actually one of the few instances in the entire Mahabharata where just two women are having a conversation with each other. And in this case, Draupadi is talking to a woman by the name of Satyabhama, who happens to be the wife of Krishna. And here, Draupadi teaches Satyabhama how to be a Pativrata, how to be a devoted wife. And one of the things she says when she's talking to Satyabhama is, my dharma rests on my husband as I think it eternally does with women. He is the God. He is the path, nothing else. So in other words, we see how this is another example of this extreme loyalty. We might even see it as restrictive and submissive that a woman has towards her husband. One of the things, though, that I emphasize in the research that I do on the Mahabharata is that even though these roles of Stridharma and the Pativrata can be restrictive, there's also another side to these roles, another side that gives quite a bit of agency and autonomy to women. So, for example, if we return to this dialogue between Draupadi and Satyabhama, we can see that in addition to spelling out the more restrictive side of being a Pativrata, Draupadi also tells Satyabhama that as the wife, she's in charge of the finances of the household, that she's in charge of all the servants and all the people who work in the household. And Draupadi is a princess, so you can imagine the large staff of maids and servants and cooks that they have. And so one of the things we find here is that Draupadi's basically saying, yes, on the one hand, I'm devoted to my husband, but also there's this whole domain of activity where she is in charge, not only including being basically the boss of all the people who work in the household, but also being in charge of the household income. Her husband's earned the money, she's in charge of it, she's the one who decides how to spend it. So one of the things that one of my friends and colleagues, Laurie Patton, who's a great scholar of Hinduism, has written about, she says that for Draupadi, she not only conveys the classic Pativrata devotion, but she also shows her awareness, and this is quoting Laurie, of the basic power dynamics between men and women, as well as her sense of her own powers and agency within a given situation. And as Laurie Patton continues, what we learned from Draupadi is something that she says most feminist analysis might not understand, and that is being a Pativrata is a two-way street. So in other words, yes, there is this rather restricted side to being a Pativrata, but there's also an empowering side. Now, to illustrate that, I want to call attention to another story from the Mahabharata. And the name of this story is the Pativrata, the story of the devoted wife. Now, this is a story that is told by a famous sage by the name of Markandeya to a king by the name of Yudhishthira. You don't necessarily need to remember these names, but it's interesting to think here that Yudhishthira is actually Draupadi's husband, and Draupadi, even though we don't hear her talk here, is listening to this story while Yudhishthira is hearing it from this famous sage. So this story starts when Yudhishthira, the king, asks Markandeya to tell him about the greatness of women and the subtleties of Dharma. Yudhishthira says, I do not see anything more difficult than Stridharma. And so in response to this question of Yudhishthira, Markandeya tells the story of the Pativrata. Now, this story starts with a sage by the name of Kaushika. Kaushika, who is a sage who's famous for his great abilities to perform austerities. One day, Kaushika is reciting the Vedas under a tree. He's deep in meditation as he's reciting the Vedas. And suddenly, out of the blue, a female egret defecates on his head. And even though Kaushika is this great ascetic who's known for his amazing ability to perform austerities and to control his senses, to control his emotions. On this occasion, because all of a sudden this bird has defecated on his head, he becomes angry and he looks at the bird. And because he is an ascetic with these amazing powers, just by looking at the bird angrily, he kills the bird. And then after killing the bird, he feels bad about what he does. So he decides to go around and from household to household and beg for food. And this is the kind of thing that ascetics in ancient India would do for food. They would go around and ask for food. And that might actually seem like a selfish thing to do, but actually it's a compassionate thing to do, because in this context, just by giving food to a wandering ascetic, the person giving the food would achieve merit. So he decides that he's going to go to a local village and ask for food. And in one of the households where he goes around to ask for food, he's greeted at the door by a devoted wife, a pativrata. And the pativrata knows how to greet an ascetic. And so what she does is she offers him food and some water. But then in the middle of greeting the ascetic, her husband arrives. And she leaves the ascetic at the door to go to attend to her husband. And she actually leaves the ascetic waiting at the door for quite a long time. And so the ascetic, remember his name is Kaushika, becomes angry while he's waiting for the pativrata to return. And when she finally returns, he tells her that she shouldn't have kept him waiting. And it's at this point that the pativrata tells the Kaushika that she's actually very knowledgeable as a pativrata, and because the most important thing in terms of being a pativrata is being devoted to her husband, she knows that actually, even though she left the Brahmin waiting at the door, she did the right thing. She also reveals that because she's a pativrata and because she abides by her responsibilities as a pativrata so well, that she has gained certain powers. So, for example, she reveals that she knows that Kaushika had been defecated on the head by the bird, and she also knows exactly why Kaushika had come to her house. She then says that a Brahmin is someone who is master of his senses and somebody who is always devoted to the law. And she basically tells Kaushika that he's not a true Brahmin because he has not mastered his senses. And she is the one to teach him how to be a better master of his senses. Then she reveals that she knows the true Dharma, which she calls the subtle Dharma. And she says that basically he doesn't know the true Dharma, that he should learn from her, and that he should go off and learn from a hunter. And he later does this, and then the story continues when he goes off and learns from a hunter. But before he goes, Kaushika praises her and basically says that she is the voice of his salvation, and that she is a true knower of the subtle Dharma. Okay. So here we see in this story, it's the devoted wife who teaches a Brahmin how to be a true Brahmin. And basically, based on her practice of being a pativrata, She is more knowledgeable than the Brahmin and knows things about Dharma that he doesn't even know. Now, let me just sum up some of the things that we've learned here about Stridharma and the Pativrata. Basically, we've seen that these can be rather restrictive roles for women in Hinduism. But we've also seen that through these famous stories, that the role of the Pativrata or the role of following Stridharma can also include having power and authority and autonomy within the household. That these can be a two-way street that offers powerful responsibilities and sometimes special powers for women. We've also seen that Stridharma can be equated with subtle Dharma. And subtle Dharma is a type of Dharma that is often considered the highest understanding of Dharma. In other words, the highest understanding of Dharma is available to women as well as to people from lower castes. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed these stories. More soon in other podcasts.
Well, thank you, Dr. Black, for that really interesting lecture.
We'll keep you posted with mini lectures in the future, so if you haven't already, please like us on Facebook at Text Talks, Twitter at Text Talks 1 and Instagram at Text Talks 1, or you can email us at enquiry.texttalks@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening.